my name's Brian. I'm actually building a piano. Not an actual piano to play, but just an empty piano shell to put my keyboards in at church, just to hide all the cables and everything. I've seen a couple different versions of this online. I've seen pictures. I've even seen a couple of videos. Somebody giving a walkthrough. I kind of wanted to show a little bit of my process along the way, just for anybody else that was wanting to do something like this. I am not a woodworker. I'm not a carpenter. I'm not very good at this. I'm just flying by the seat of my pants. I've just I wrote some plans down. I've got most of it in my head, and I'm just kind of going with it. I'm using mostly plywood, 2x4s, and I've got some trim from Lowe's or from Home Depot for the back side of the piano. Just kind of wanted to show step by step what I'm doing, how I'm doing it. Maybe you can do it better. If you have done it better, share a link in the comments below. Just let me know how you're doing it or what you're doing, and hopefully this helps you, as I wish I would have had help from someone else. So I've got some of my plans drawn up here. Again, I'm not a carpenter, so this is just chicken scratch. That was just my first draft of kind of drawing a piano, really, just to get my mind on paper. What I'm essentially doing is, because I don't want it to be all one solid side, I actually want to have a leg. I did buy a couple of legs from Home Depot or from Lowe's. So what I'm doing is I'm building a box that will be the back half of the piano. Then I'm going to run a couple of 2x4s vertically or horizontally. I'm going to run the legs from that, and then the key bed will go on top. And I'm actually building, where most pianos, you have like the bottom key bed, and then you have like a little shelf that your music stand sits on, and then you have the back of the piano. I'm actually going to build that music stand section to be deep enough, possibly, to actually house a second keyboard, a MIDI controller, and a laptop, so that it's not all sitting on top. If I'm not able to do that, I will at least have the key bed for my first keyboard, which is my Nord Electro 5D. And then I'm going to build it. There's a style of piano called a spinet piano, and it's actually just a shorter piano. It's not a full upright. So I'm hopefully building that. So I've got some of my dimensions. Just to simplify, I actually drew, like, this is a 2x4, that's a 2x4. All these lines are 2x4s, just so I wouldn't have to try to draw in 3D and make it look completely ugly and messed up. So this is going to be the back side. These are 2x4s. This is going to be just ply up here. The background of this is plywood, and then I've got my trim going diagonal. I'm planning on putting it on casters. Again, my 2x4 is going this way. Going to have some sort of decorative sidewall on it, just to hide the keyboard, or just to make it look a little more like a real piano. So these are just some of the steps that I've found. Maybe this will help. These are my Nord dimensions. I'm actually going to build this bigger than my Nord, just so that, because it is at church, and other people, like if I'm not there, if I'm on the road gigging for something else, somebody else will fill in and bring their own keyboard. Maybe they can put it in. So I've got my first cut done. You can't really tell that that's what that's going to be as a piano, especially right up against the rest of my wood. But again, so my dimensions were, it's going to be 55 inches long. Again, that's longer than my Nord. And then 40 inches high. Again, I didn't want to build one that was too tall. I wanted to make something that was a little more like a spinet piano. So I've got this back panel cut out. Now I'm going to cut my side panels, which I want to be, again, 40 inches, because it'll be the same height. And then 10 inches, because I want the overall here to be 24. So just 10 inches, just to hide the cables. Don't need it to be too thick. This back panel is 1/8 inch ply. So it's not going to be too thick, not going to be too heavy. But my sides are going to be 1/4 inch, just because I'd like it to be a little thicker, a little sturdier, and I'm going to install handles. All right, so now that I do have my sides cut, I've got the 2 of those. What I've decided to do on the frame on the inside is taking 2x4s, cut these to the 40 inches of the height. My siding is going to fit right here. And again, I'm not a carpenter, so this may be wrong the way I'm doing it, but it's just how I'm doing it. So, and then I've got See, the entire length of the back is 55 inches. So with the 3/4 inch plywood, or 1/4 inch, however thick that is, plus the plywood, measured that out to what I would need, and it's 51 or 50 and a quarter. So I'm building this frame. That way I'm actually going to have something to put all the sides up against, and have something that's hopefully somewhat sturdy. Alright, so I got my frame and my sides put up. I'm sorry, I'm a little shaky. Got my frame and my sides, just everything just screwed in there. And so far, alright, so now I've got my supports right there. I've just screwed those into those side, the side plywood, the side walls. And I've cut a board that's going to lay on top for the key bed. Now I've got my sides just to hide the keyboard and make it look more like a real piano. So it's getting there. So I got one leg on. What I had to do was the legs came in 29-inch increments, and I want this to be 25 inches tall before I put like the casters and everything on. So I had to cut down the legs. As you know, most of the time at Home Depot or Lowe's, they come with like bolts in them and pre-slotted so they can go into a table. So I just measured it out to 25 inches, and actually able to set it underneath, and it's the height that I want. And I'll just screw it in like I did that one. So far, so good. Keep on going. So after adding the legs and everything, I went and added a couple of 2x4s. As you can see, I'm not exactly crazy about it, but I've got a bunch of screws into the side of this thing. But if you know what a real piano looks like, it doesn't look like it's screwed in on the sides. So I'm gonna have to figure out a way to maybe hide that or make it look a little more real. But so what I've got is those 2x4s, and this is just a second shelf. It'll be for my MIDI. So yeah, looking good. All right, so I'm on day 2. Working on this. I had to come to quits yesterday. After I got the legs on, I actually just took my thin 1/4 inch plywood and just created a panel to make it look a little more solid, a little more complete. I added these hardware handles just to lift it up and make it easier to get around. I ended up adding a 2x4 down here on the bottom just to give it some extra support, because my plywood on the back was a little flimsy when I started to add the decorations to the back. But you can see I took a 2x6 and created a base for it so that the legs had something to screw onto, so they won't move. And I've got something to put my casters onto, my wheels. And for the back, I ended up just taking some 1x4s and putting them vertical. Then I went and I have this trim. So just trim from Lowe's. Pretty cheap, pretty easy to get. Ended up cutting some 45-degree angles and lining them up as best I could. You can see that one of them's a little off, but yeah, I mean, that pretty solid to me. It looks like a piano. Yeah, it's a little crooked. Also ended up taking some of the trim, and I mean, it's a little shoddy just because it kept splitting, but ended up putting some up here just to make it look kind of like it's hinged, like it would flip up if I wanted it to. It's not going to. I also ended up putting one on top just so that if I end up putting a laptop up here or a MIDI up here, it's not going to slide. So I've got my keyboard sitting over there. I'm gonna throw it up, let you see how it looks. All right, so it ends up that I actually don't have enough space on this second shelf for my MacBook Pro. Also, I figured maybe I would have enough space beside the Nord. If I scooted the Nord all the way left, there's not enough space for that. So I do have to put it on the shelf, which is a good thing I added this, because it's not gonna just slide off with the, I've had this drop a couple of times, but it shouldn't just slide off the back. I'm not sure how to get rid of this blue ink. I think I'm just gonna stain it over top and try to do my best. Maybe take a brown marker to it. But there it is. It's, pre-stained. I'm gonna take the hardware back off and stain it, and then I'll add the casters to the bottom to make it a little taller. But that's about the height, almost the height that I want. But yeah, so I've added my casters, and I have stained the entire stand. So I used a walnut stain. Just picked up the small can from Lowe's, and I used a golden pecan on the back. Originally wasn't going to stain the back just because the backs of regular pianos aren't stained, but for looks, I wanted this to have a little bit of color. So just that golden pecan right up next to the walnut just makes it really pop. And there she is. I'm gonna put my handles back on and it'll be ready to go.